The Stooges are perhaps one of the most influential American bands of all time. During their very brief career, they created music that went on to inspire practically every punk band that's ever existed, as well as having an influence on a diverse range of artists from David Bowie to Madonna. In this video, I'll be taking a closer look at the Stooges albums and ranking them from A star to F. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out more of our music criticism videos. Often called the first punk rock album, the Stooges' debut was a chaotic burst of aggressive and simple rock, which blended together the attitude of the Rolling Stones, the overdriven guitar of the Kinks, and the simplistic lyrics of bands such as Them and the Sonics. What sets this record apart from the rest of the garage rock coming out at that time is its production. While much of the garage rock of this era was recorded in a fittingly low-fidelity style, producer John Cale effectively captured the Stooges' primitive sound on the then state-of-the-art equipment at the Hit Factory in New York. On its release, the sound was like nothing that came before it, effectively drawing a line under the flower power pop of the 1960s and signalling that the future was loud, dumb, and full of attitude. In terms of musical importance, this record is easily an A+. I think it's up there with the Velvet Underground's debut in terms of the influence that it had on music. That said, I don't think it's the Stooges' best work, and its main flaw is that the immediacy of the songs is compromised by the rudimentary stretched-out soloing that accompanies many of the tracks. That said, 1969, I Wanna Be Your Dog, and No Fun are easily among the Stooges' most iconic songs, and some of the greatest punk songs of all time. Funhouse pushed the boundaries of hard rock further than any other Stooges album, and developed the Stooges style further, branching off into what can only be described as punk jazz. It's often said that bands always struggle to match the quality of their debut album, but I think Funhouse improves on virtually every single aspect of their self-titled release. The instrumentation is so much fuller with double-track guitars, organs, and the addition of Steve Mackay playing some of the most sleazy saxophone solos on tape. Iggy has never sounded so vicious. His lyrics on this album are snarled, shouted, screamed and growled over the relentless musical onslaught. The words themselves, particularly on songs like 1970, capture the paranoia felt at the turn of the decade. The band had vastly improved their musicianship, the guitar soloing on Dirt is phenomenal, Down on the Street pushes the boundaries towards heavy metal, a style of music in its infancy at the time, and every song is consistently great. The album doesn't have a weak track. Even LA Blues, a mostly instrumental song of dissonant soloing punctuated by Iggy's unintelligible screaming, serves its purpose and adds to the overall effect of the album. It's hard not to give this album the highest marks, but the shocking thing about the Stooges is that from 1969 to 1973, the band was on an upward trajectory in terms of creativity and artistry. So I've given this an A. Much of the material on the Stooges' first two albums was driven by improvisation over a central guitar riff, which sometimes pushed the boundaries of repetition to its extremities. For raw power, however, the Stooges took a more conventional approach to songwriting by penning succinct tracks that never overstay their welcome. In my opinion, Raw Power is where the punk sound was perfected. It's a collection of short, simple songs played aggressively and with attitude. A major reason for this is the addition of James Williamson to the band, whose precise and searing lead guitar work is the star of the album, second only in importance to Iggy's vocal. On top of the powerful rock you'd expect from a Stooges release, Columbia Records pushed the band to record ballads, which led to the inclusion of Gimme Danger and I Need Somebody, two of my favourite Stooges songs. There are two main mixes of Raw Power, both with their merits, that present the material in different ways. The original release, produced by David Bowie, was more of a salvage job, with Bowie given just one day to try and fix Iggy's poorly balanced first attempt at production. The tapes Iggy gave Bowie contained only 4 tracks, a submix of the band on a stereo track, one track containing lead guitar, and the last track containing Iggy's lead vocal. Because of this, the original mix was always criticised for its sound, and it never really worked on CD. In 1997, Iggy was given the opportunity to revisit the original 24-track tapes to produce a new mix. The resulting mix removes all of the nuance, effects and detail added by Bowie, and pushes all the instrument tracks to their extremes. Somewhat fittingly, this new mix is one of the loudest albums ever released. If I'm honest, I listen to the Iggy mix more than the Bowie mix, but regardless of which one you prefer, the material is still fantastic, and without a doubt, Raw Power is peak Stooges, one of the best albums of the 1970s and certainly one of the greatest records of all time. Metallic KO is an album whose legend is more important than its contents. Recorded in Detroit in 1973 and 1974, half of the performance is taken from the Stooges' last ever concert, and you can hear the hostility between the band and the audience on the tape. According to the music critic Lester Bangs, in the run-up to the 1974 show, Iggy picked a fight with a gang of bikers who promised to kill him if he performed there. While this obviously never transpired, you can actually hear eggs, light bulbs, beer bottles and drinks being thrown at Iggy as he taunts his audience. Somewhat ironically, the tracks recorded at the 1974 gig have vastly superior sound quality, while the 1973 tracks appear to be an audience recording. This patchiness somewhat spoils the album's listenability, and there are better performances available, such as the Georgia Peaches album from October 1973, which was released as part of the deluxe version of Raw Power. That said, it's an important historical document and worth a listen if you haven't heard it. The Stooges' first comeback album, 2007's The Weirdness, is better off being ignored. It lacks the punch of the Stooges' previous material, the songs are all very samey, and Iggy's lyrics and performance lacks the energy that carried a lot of the material of the earlier Stooges. It's the only Stooges album that I've never bothered to buy a physical copy of, because I don't like the songs and I'd rather just pretend it didn't exist. I'm obviously going to give it an F, but if you like this album, do let me know in the comments section what I've got wrong with it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. While not as important as Metallic KO, 2011's Raw Power Live is a decent performance from the Stooges as they run through the tracks from the album of the same name. It's probably the best sounding Stooges live recording, albeit not the greatest performance, and I'd think of it more as a curio for hardcore fans rather than an album people would just put on to casually listen to. Again, Georgia Peaches is the superior live album compared to this. Their second comeback album, 2013's Ready to Die, is a pretty solid album. Its only real downside is that we have to judge it against the Stooges' original material, which is undeniably superior. Some of the songs on this release are the best Iggy's penned in decades. In fact, I'd say that the A-side is probably the strongest and most consistent run of Iggy Pop songs since 1993's American Caesar. Iggy's vocals here are also pretty solid. He appears to have regained the energy missing on The Weirdness. Side B, however, isn't as good as Side A. It starts off strong with the record's title track, and then Double D's is fine, if not a bit silly, but the last three tracks are a bit of a letdown. They aren't bad in the same way that the Weirdness tracks were bad, they just seem cliche, and I don't like the fact that the record ends with a whimper with the song The Departed, after the Stooges have just proven that they can still craft energetic and fun rock songs. That said, if the Weirdness didn't exist, I would have classed this as an almost perfect comeback for a band as legendary as the Stooges, and heralded their catalogue as one of the most consistent of all bands. I'll give it a C, but like with the debut albums, some of the songs on this are so good that I'd probably include them in my top 20. So, there we have it. Every Stooges album ranked from A star to F. How did I do? Did I get anything wrong? Join the discussion in the comments section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the rest of the Iggy Pop catalogue.